It's some of the best instructional videos on how to fly on the internet. We're going to be talking to Jason from the Finer Points.
In the hangar. Welcome to a special on location in the hangar. I'm Christy Wong.
And I'm Dan Milliken. We are at AirVenture, and we are doing the first thing up. The show's not even open yet, so things are starting to get cooking. You'll see booth opening and everything else. But you know what? What a better time to bring on one of the best CFIs in the country, because they're used to early mornings.
Absolutely. We definitely could not be here without our sponsors. So a quick thank you to Flying Eyes,
who we're at, and using our discount code at flyingeyesoptics.com will get you 10% off, and also clemensinsurance.net. Jerry there, he took my insurance, found ways to lower my costs, saved me like over $1,000.
Jerry is the man, but you know who else is the man?
Who?
Jason.
Jason from the Finer Points. Jason, thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here. Good morning.
We're happy you're here. We're happy that you're caffeinated.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
It's early.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, Dan, for a CFI, this isn't too early. But
this isn't too early for a CFI.
This is a bit early.
True.
But it did kind of stop you from partying too long last night, right?
Thank you. Yes, it did. It did. I had a really good excuse.
We're looking out for you.
Yeah, we're here for you.
And I need that.
The first thing I've always wanted to, this is the first time we've met, and what I wanted to talk to you about is, dude, you're wearing a Corsair and you're doing all your videos.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that? Because that's my favorite plane.
Well, honestly, it's just a really amazing airplane. So,
Yes.
so there's not a very specific connection, but I did, part of my story is after I got my private certificate, I moved from Chicago to California, and I started to meet some amazing mentors in aviation. One of those people was Lou Fields. I don't know if anybody knows that name, Lou Fields. He's not with us anymore, but he was an instructor in Corsairs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, it's just that little connection was always neat, but honestly, it's just that the plane looks cool on the shirt.
It does.
It does look cool.
It does look
I'm
cool.
not
That's
going to
about
argue
it.
on that. But
Yeah.
you have not gotten to fly a Corsair.
I have not yet.
Neither have I. It's sad, but yes.
Well, I have to thank you personally because I watched your videos when I was growing up as a pilot.
Wow.
So,
Your videos got me through my commercial check ride.
Oh, that's
specifically.
amazing. Thank you. I'm
So
happy they were
before the
there.
commercial check ride, I was a little foggy on some of the maneuvers. I remember you walking out on the asphalt, some of the moves for the commercial maneuver, and it clicked at that point for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's always a fun thing to do as much as possible. I'll try to get my students out by the airplane. We can do the briefing there, especially when it comes to not so many people doing this anymore, but like VOR navigation or trying
Right.
to get your head around situational awareness. It's nice to walk around the ramp. You see all the aerobatic pilots doing it, before they go fly
They
their
must know
routine.
something.
Yeah, they must. They must.
so as a CFI who has a platform to be able to do stuff like this, I've had people ask me, "Oh, Christy, why don't you do instructional videos?" And I'm like, "No." What possessed you to start doing these types of videos?
Well, I started really early. I started my podcast in 2005, and I started the YouTube channel in 2007.
Wow,
And,
way early.
Yeah, really early. And, like many other flight instructors, I have, let's just say, strong opinions about
Yeah.
how things should
Really?
Which is
No.
why I don't. I would not do that.
So I really just saw it as another way to get quality information out there. All of a sudden there's this thing called YouTube, and I can make videos telling people the, quote, right way to do it, or the way I would do it, what I would tell my students.
Techniques.
Yeah, techniques, and it just seemed like a good value for everybody. I was able to turn it into a little bit of a business, and people all over the world are able to get access to good quality flight training. So,
Why the name The Finer Points?
that was really just, funny enough, it was meant to be just a little a podcast to go along with a business that I was starting at the time called ontheflightline.com. That was my website back in 2007.
Right.
And the Finer Points was just going to be this little podcast that I did to promote
part
it.
of that.
Yeah, and while I built the real business, yeah?
Right.
So what did John Lennon say? Life is the thing that happens while you make your plans, right? So
Right.
that's basically what ended up happening. The Finer Points is just exactly what it sounds like, little tips and tricks, things you may not have heard from your instructor, things that I feel privileged to know from folks like Lou Fields or Richard Anderson or Mike Corcoran or some of these great mentors in my life who always did show me the finer points, and I'm just trying to carry that legacy forward and pass it along.
Can I bring up kind of a debated topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about the impossible turn.
Okay.
That's one of your videos that you've, and there's a lot of different aviation YouTubers who have had hot opinions on this. So let's dive into some hot aviation opinions.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to try to capture in a conversation, much less a video, because there are so many variables.
Yes.
You know, like I can do, you know, so for anybody watching who doesn't know what the impossible turn is, you guys are talking about taking off, you know, on a runway, losing your engine potentially on the upwind or the departure leg. On the
Yeah, right. I watched that video.
That's a whole different conversation, right? On the first leg of the pattern there, and attempting to do a 180-degree turn back to the airport, right?
That's really 220 and then 40 bow, whatever.
Yeah, but getting back to the runway, and so many pilots have died trying that, even experienced pilots who say they would never die trying that, that it's become known as the impossible turn. Now, in a nutshell, sometimes it's totally possible.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I just want to make sure that, you know, folks that are out there practicing it saying, oh, I could do that. I did it the other day in my 152. There's a lot of other factors involved. You know, what's the weight of the aircraft?
Density altitude is a huge
What's the
factor.
crosswind?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all of those things, and the startle, effect is not to be underestimated. You know,
Absolutely. It takes about 10 seconds to really like what's going on. Okay, and then get into it.
Yeah, it might be that long. I think the FAA recommends at least waiting 5 seconds before you do anything, and that's an eternity when you're have a high pitch attitude and your engine is gone.
Well, and the difference between 500 feet and 700 feet makes a huge difference.
Yeah, if you're hitting the ground and you thought it was 200 feet lower, you know.
Yeah, and the type of plane, and one of the things I do now because of watching videos like yours and others, I always include that in my pre-takeoff briefing. Yeah. So we're sitting short of the runway. We're about to go. Okay, let's talk. We lose the engine on the runway. What do? We lose the engine after takeoff. What do we do? And then the third thing in my pre-takeoff briefing is out today, right now, with the conditions and everything else, what is our turn back altitude?
Yeah.
And I establish it right there because I don't want to be thinking about that in the event.
What is your turn back altitude on a day like today in Lola?
On Lola, if we got very little winds, but high density altitude, I'd probably say 800 feet AGL.
Okay. You think you could turn her back at
800 feet. So my airport's at 800 feet. So I then know in my head 1600 on the altimeter before I'll even consider turning back.
Yeah, and that's totally reasonable. And there's shades of gray from that all the way up to don't even try it. Like, we do mountain training out of South Lake Tahoe where the density altitude is 8,500, 9,000 feet.
So you need like 5,000 feet AGL.
You're lucky to be getting 100 feet per minute in your climb straight ahead. You try doing that 180-degree turn there and you'll be in the pine trees. So, it's and everything in between. And I think the smart part is that you're just briefing ahead, and you've tried all the different things. That's mostly what I was trying to say in my video is that folks should go out, get an instructor, try different power settings, try different weights, and just understand what the plane can do and what it can't do.
I've done it in the Warrior.
You have? At what level?
Yeah. So we tried it at varying levels. Kevin and I actually took the Warrior out to Bridgeport, and we just practiced it. Mm-hmm. But in all fairness, it was I want to say it was like fall time. So it was a little bit cooler.
And if you have a good, strong crosswind, that actually can help you.
Right, exactly. And there were a couple of times that we actually tried it at like 500 or 700 feet. And we weren't going to make it. So we just added power and, busted out of there.
Yeah.
And I think the danger with the impossible turn, or the turn back to the airport, the danger is that we do say impossible turn, and pilots are notoriously type A, and you say, oh, impossible, well, hold my beer. There's I know for me, I hear, or below minimums. I can nail that, and there's no better feeling than, but no, and that's why I have to remind myself superior judgment trumps superior skills, because it's not about the skills, it's about the judgment.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think being prepared, having some plan, trying to minimize those 5 or 10 seconds or whatever they are, and even if that thing is going forward in a controlled way, I mean, that at the end of the day, we just don't want to lose control of the airplane, whether you end up in a field, in a tree, or on the runway.
Fly it all the way to the crash.
If you fly it all the way down, it's going to be the best outcome. So I think if pilots can just get ahead like you're talking about and be prepared for what they're going to do, whether it's the perfectly right thing, could they have gotten an extra 50 feet if they turn left or if they turn right? That's for the armchair quarterbacks.
Right.
You know, the pilots just have to get in the game and know what they're going to do and execute it.
So your takeaway message for that topic is get with your CFI, go out and attempt it under varying conditions and see what your particular airplane can do under those specific conditions.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. And then understand also that, you know, nobody really gets into trouble during training or practice. Or I shouldn't say nobody, but that's not where it's going to happen.
Right.
You know, you're going to prove something to yourself. And then someday you're going to have your relatives in the back and a couple cousins in from out of town, and you're leaving breakfast, and you're 2 hours later than you thought, and you're not thinking about it, and that's when it's going to happen. And
or you'll lose your PT6 at flight level 220.
Oh my gosh.
I know a guy whom
Yeah, I was
whom
gonna
that
say, I think I
happened.
know a
We
guy.
had him on the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing when you're out practicing it and you know it's coming. It's another thing when you're just out going to the $100 hamburger and all of a sudden, what is going on?
Yeah, exactly.
So, but
Yeah.
I think just knowing what the airplane is capable of is a huge factor.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's go through private and then also commercial. What is the one toughest maneuver you would say that students have in the private?
I think turning stalls are often misunderstood, and they're. This is a whole can of worms we open here, Dan.
Yeah, no, I was about to say turning stalls.
Yeah,
okay.
well, I was just going to say
Please
that.
continue.
Well, I don't think so. I teach my private students the lazy 8, and we're going to probably get to.
Oh, you do?
I do. We're going to probably get to commercial maneuvers, but I absolutely teach them the lazy 8.
Interesting.
Because I think it's the only maneuver that really shows how you can leverage the overbanking tendency in a slowing turn, right?
Wow. Okay.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
And so when I see pilots demonstrate stalls, if I'm doing a phase check or something, and I'll say, okay, do the next one in a climbing right turn or a climbing left turn. Often they put the airplane in the 20 or 30 degree bank and they start to execute the stall, and it ends up in some sort of accelerated stall. The pitch attitude falls because the airplane's tending to overbank. And they're just pulling and pulling and pulling until they hear the horn, and everybody gets uncomfortable, and they say, okay, that was fine, and then they move on. You know?
Recover.
Right, recover. But if you understand that the airplane will overbank, if you just put in the tiniest little bank, put in 2-3 degrees of bank and pull straight back, you'll end up at 20 or 30 degrees before you know it. And if you can learn how to control that and slow the airplane down to something close to the stall, with your wings level, then introduce a small 2 or 3 degree bank and pull back, you'll do exactly what the ACS is asking for. You'll stall controlled at 20 or 30 degrees of bank.
Spin danger there?
Is there spin danger? Well, anytime you're stalling.
Well,
right?
yeah, but even more so if you're.
I think I wouldn't say danger, but I would say when you're stalling straight ahead, it's very obvious when you're yawing and when you're not yawing, right? And if you're in a turn and the nose of the airplane is coming through the horizon short of the ball or the slab, depending on if you're glass or not. But just visually, it's a bit trickier to tell if you're coordinated. So, the good news is there's an allowance for some roll. I think it's plus or minus 10 degrees of bank or something. I don't have the ACS handy. So as long as you have worked on coordination a little bit and you understand what it feels like, and you can reference the ball without staring at it, I think most folks. I've never seen. Let's just say I've never seen a student, and I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've never seen a student accidentally spin during stall training.
Okay. Oh,
Wow.
all right.
That's good.
Okay, commercial maneuver.
The hardest one?
Yeah.
Funny enough, I think I'm going to say 8s on pylons.
Yes.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Because you have
And-
to actually do math, and I'm a liberal arts major.
Yeah, there's that, and it's also, in my experience, the success of your 8s on pylons depends on how perfectly oriented the spots you picked is. So, you're supposed to pick two pylons, right?
Right.
Some distance apart and aligned with the wind in a certain way, so that the wind is flowing, across the line that connects the two, perpendicular to the line that connects the two. And so on the day you go out there, you're thinking about where the wind's coming from, you're looking around, and you're trying to find two spots that are spaced the way you've practiced it, right? So most folks go out and they have a few spots up their sleeve. I know if the winds are from the west, I'm going to use those things, or if the wind is from the east, I'm going to use those things. But if your spot is not designed perfectly, it can really throw off the maneuver. So I think half the battle is picking the correct location, but that seems to be not as easy as it sounds.
Right.
I would
I would agree with that. When I first started that maneuver, I frustrated myself. And I literally had to go find another spot that I could, and I would just use like crossroads or like maybe a little cluster of houses, because we're out there north of Denton in the practice area, and that was so frustrating. But once I got it, it became my favorite maneuver.
It is fun. Yeah.
It's like you conquer it and you're like, you're mine.
Yeah.
In the flight instruction world, I'm going to oversimplify, but you either have a 22-year-old who's trying to time build for the airlines, or you have a 69-year-old who has aged out of the airlines and is just trying to stay in aviation. Do you see that as a problem? Do you, you're to me, you're an outlier. You're somebody who decided to be a CFI for a career. And what are your thoughts on that situation?
The short answer is, I see it as a huge problem. And, I'm old enough to remember when the industry shut down in the 80s. Cessna stopped making planes in 87, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we went from 1 million pilots to 200,000 pilots in less than 10 years.
Wow.
Right? So it destroyed the industry at that time. And it was all because people were crashing their airplanes. And the fact is, you're correct. I have folks come out to California pretty regularly and say, hey, I want to fly with you for a week and just fill some holes in my training or whatever. Now, I'll say this, there's a lot of great flight instructors out there, but some of what I'm seeing is scary.
Yeah.
I've seen students come out with 30 hours and their instructor has never left the traffic pattern with them.
Wow.
Never allowed them to use the radios, never allowed them to start the airplane, And when I hear things like that, it troubles me, because I think we could be headed back to something like we saw in the 80s if people aren't careful.
Why? Is it financial that the flight school just wants to make money, so let's keep the students there as long as possible? I mean, what's going on?
I think there's some of that. I don't think it's about keeping them there as long as possible. They want to present a package that gets people moving fast. The airlines are like a giant vacuum right now.
Yeah, they are.
And the industry is moving so fast, and nobody really stays in teaching very long. They're just trying to get through to get their 1,000 hours to get hired. I mean, if I could do a shameless plug, this is why we built our ground school app. I mean, I have an app that has flight lessons with me that teaches every single thing I would teach you if you were my private student. And that's at getgroundschool.com. But that's
shameless plug allowed.
That was a shameless plug. But that's really why we do it, is because I want these instructors or these students to have access to, look at that exercise he's doing. Why aren't we doing that? Or can we try this thing that I'm seeing in the app? Can we do these landing exercises or fly a lazy 8 or whatever it is?
What's the future for the finer points?
Well, I love to teach flying. It's what I do. And right now my time is split pretty evenly between real life students in the airplane and working on the ground school app, trying to take the knowledge that I've gained over 20 years and put it into a product, a tool that I can send to pilots all over the world that will help make pilots safer and make pilots better. And that's what I love to do, whether it's one pilot or as many as I can hit online.
You started this in, what'd you say, 2007. Is there a finite number? I mean, how many videos you can have? You've got 8s on Pylons covered. Can you do another? Have you ever felt like I've reached the point where I don't have anything else to present?
Having done it for a very long time, it's peaks and valleys for sure. But my wife can tell you that I could probably talk flying for 3 lifetimes back to back. I just,
one of us.
Yeah, exactly. How much is there to say about flying? But there definitely is a lot of revisiting. And if I think people need to hear it or need to hear it again, or I'm really constantly trying to evolve. If I think of a different way to say it or a better way to show it or whatever, I definitely don't feel like I'm out of things to say.
Well, and the ACS evolves.
Yeah.
Every few years or so, something else, gets popped in there, and it's like, let's review this, let's talk about this, and why this changed.
Yeah, and planes change too. I mean, slowly, but they do. And I mean, you're teaching glass now, and 20 years ago you weren't. And I guess next step will be teaching how to fly electric planes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, who knows? And that, there is a bit of a sadness to some of that. Like I can fly an NDB approach with like the best of them, but you get to a point.
I can listen to the AM radio and pick up a station, but yeah.
I still have an ADF in the Warrior,
See,
and it works.
Yeah, right. And we're in this place where I had a guy recently come out. He flew a 182 and he did not have a GPS in his plane, right? So it was all these old school tricks that I was so happy to be able to share with him. How to visualize yourself on the face of the OBS and how to use 2 needles or fly direct to an intersection without a GPS. But the reality is he's just, there's very few people like that anymore. Most everybody has access to GPS technology. And so a lot of what I've learned from my mentors like Lou and Richard or Mike, a lot of that stuff eventually will just be shelved or put into the app just so that it's frozen in time.
Right. Well, you got videos covering it that'll always be there.
Yeah, there you go.
Timeless.
There you
You're
go.
going to be like John and Martha, just timeless. We need to get you a hairdo.
That's a great honor. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, Jason, thanks for coming, especially this early.
Yes, thank you.
Before
Coffee in hand.
AirVenture even opens, we've got you out here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was fun to be here.
You guys, make sure you visit. If you haven't, make sure you go to the finer points, that you subscribe. Whether you're a new pilot, an old pilot,
or a bold pilot.
Yeah, don't no. There is a treasure trove of videos I go to all the time. If I'm wondering, I need to really bone up on my Power Off 180, Jason's video is, and he's got several on it. They're phenomenal. So check him out. We need to get him some flying eyes at some point, though. He's,
I was gonna
you're gonna have
say.
fatigue here if you don't. Anyway, but. So, and
that's our shameless plug.
And that's our shameless plug.
Yeah.
Our sponsors,
Each
Flying
get one.
Eyes, flyingeyesoptics.com. Use our code taking off all caps one word for 10% off. ClemensInsurance.net. And we also have MPS, Marshall Protective Services. We've got Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there. My favorite camera mounts in the plane are 67 Design, 67D.com, and Colton Mortgage for your residential mortgage. Colton taking off. Christy?
All right. Thanks, guys. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, share. We'll see you all next time.
In the hangar.